Thank you for doing this with us. Welcome to our podcast. How are you feeling today?
Doing well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks for having me.
This is a podcast that we have been doing for a couple of months. I started it like 2 months ago, and we have had like a couple of guests, and we have published it on our website and on our YouTube channel. So you are like our third or fourth guest, I think, from for now. So yeah.
Awesome.
My first question is that I think I don't do a justice of by introducing someone. So I think a person can introduce himself the best. So can you tell me a little bit about yourself? What do you do? Like what have you studied from school and what have you been journey like school, college, university? What have you faced and like something like that? A brief history of yourself.
Got you. So I am Michael Hunt. I am the current director for the McNair Scholars Program at UMBC, University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I am from Baltimore, Maryland, born and raised. And
Local.
I what you say?
I said you are a local.
Oh yes, definitely local. Went to UMBC for undergrad. Actually went to the great Baltimore Polytechnic Institute
Okay.
for high school, Poly, and then went to UMBC for undergrad, where I was a McNair scholar as well,
Okay.
and also I was a Meyerhoff scholar. And then I went to Emory University for graduate school for my
What did you
master's.
study in your undergrad?
Undergrad was mathematics.
Mathematics.
Actually,
Okay.
before it was computer engineering, and then I really had a sense like I did a summer research and I really didn't enjoy it, and I really am a people person, and
Mm,
I can't be stuck in a lab, and I just didn't feel like that was the way I wanted to go, and so I ended up going into ministry and
okay.
doing my master's. Left UMBC, went to Emory to do masters in theology, masters of divinity there, and then got very well at UMBC. I was very much involved in student affairs, student life.
Mm,
I was, one of the main leaders around campus, and so, continued that when I went to Emory, and then really got involved in student affairs, and ended up leaving when I graduated from Emory. Went to be the religious life intern and the res life coordinator there at Grinnell College in Grinnell, Iowa.
okay.
The cornfields of Iowa, the middle of nowhere, the only black man in the town type thing. But it was
And you were the residential supervisor there, right?
yeah. So I did religious life there. So I helped plan religious activities and stuff for students. And then I was also a res life coordinator. So sort of like a community director that we have at
Got it.
UMBC, right? That's similar things. So I had student staff who worked under me and stuff. And so small liberal arts college, and was there for about 3 years, and then my mom got sick, and some other things. I just wanted to get closer to home again, being one of the few black people in town type
Hmm.
thing. I miss my people, and so I wanted to come back to Baltimore, at least the East Coast. Did some job searching, not a lot popped up. I wasn't getting any hits. And then I started working. Corsa Davis, who's the director of
He's our
academic,
supervisor. Yeah.
yes, AOP. She reached out and said, "Hey, you do, they know I do math, and so it's like, hey, you want to help with the um, Upward Bound program?" And so I came. That's what my first intro back to UMBC
Hmm.
staff was. I was the math instructor for Upward Bound. And then eventually she asked, "Hey, do you know how to do math?" And during that time, I was also teaching in Baltimore City. I was a for a charter school in Baltimore, all boys. I was teaching eighth grade math, so it was pretty much like pre-algebra stuff. And so I was doing that. Then I started to do the work with the Outward Bound, and then also during that time, I was became a pastor of a local church,
Mm.
and did that for some years while I was still at UMBC. And then UMBC eventually asked me to do the math GRE
Okay.
for McNair. So then I became the math GRE specialist and started doing that. And then eventually, assistant director for McNair ended up leaving that role. And Course Davis, who was now the director of McNair, was like, "Hey, or actually, I saw that they were struggling. That's what happened. I saw that they needed assistance. I said, "Hey, you need help?" And I became the interim assistant director for
Mm.
McNair at that point. And that's when I became full time in essence with the program, and then became assistant director, and then 2019 I became the director. So that's my whole sort of journey
Yeah.
now. And I'm also currently I'm in graduate school, where I am in my last class this semester for the PhD program
Mm.
in language literacy culture, where I really am studying mentoring and mentorship, and how do you provide holistic critical mentoring for students, where it breaks down the barriers of hierarchy and really have a more of a horizontal relationship, and building up the mentee and centering their voices in the process of mentoring rather than the mentor. So that's really what my research is centered around. And so I'm doing that. I'm married. This we're celebrating our 5 year wedding
Congratulations.
anniversary. Thank you. This June, I love to cruise. We're going cruising. My wife and I. Our first cruise was our honeymoon 5 years ago, and we've been going ever since. And so we're actually going to take a cruise for our anniversary. And I already got another one set for January as well. So man, we like I tell folks now, I work to cruise is how I say it.
I work to
Yeah.
cruise. Yeah.
Work to cruise.
Good to
So
have.
yeah, so that's a little. I love to sing, I love to eat, I love to cook. I just love life.
Yeah, nice to hear that. Quite a journey from studying from Baltimore, doing undergrad in math, going to a, a state where you are only one of few color people, and then doing masters in theology, coming back to UMBC, teaching math, and then taking a managerial job and doing PhD in mentorship. That's quite a journey.
Yes,
Congratulations.
yes, it's a mouthful, I tell you.
So okay. So my next question would be if like some of us who don't know a lot about McNair Scholars Program, who like the first people who are watching and don't know a lot about McNair Scholar Program, can you tell a brief detail about what is it and what does it do and how can people be associated with it?
Yes, yes, yes. Good question. Well, our program is federally funded, named after Dr. Ronald E. McNair, American physicist who passed away in a Challenger explosion in 1986.
Mm.
And it's one of the few programs nationwide that is really still it's a part of the trio programs that is still funded bipartisan through a Congress. And so again, federally funded. And what this program in particular helps first gen low income and students from historically excluded racial and ethnic groups, help them to not only finish their bachelor's degree, but get into graduate school and
Mm.
ultimately support them or help them gear in the pathway to get their doctorate degree, research based doctorate degree within 10 years of graduating their undergrad. So UMBC in this case. There are over 180 some programs across the country. We all do different things, or we're all funded through the federal government, but managed separately by the grantee. So the organization, which for us is UMBC, who receives the grant. And it's a phenomenal opportunity for students who are may not have the clear pathway set for graduate education and research, and maybe they want to do the a professorate, going into the professorate, or maybe they want to do something different, but they just don't know the ins and outs. And our program really helps them to know that to build a community and support around it. At
Mm.
UMBC, to be involved in this program, again, you have to be an undergrad, you have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident. And then we typically look at students with GPAs of at least a 3.0, but if it's a little below that, we still encourage you to apply. The website mcnair.umbc.edu is where you can find all the information about how to apply. We But right now, like, applications are pretty much closed for this season for the
Mm,
program, but we do have what we call Friends of McNair, and it's our take on an affiliates group where students who may not qualify for our program or are late to the party, in essence, they
mm,
can still get in and learn and be a part of the process and build community, and receive resources. Actually, one of our friends of McNair, we're actually taking with us this summer, on as we travel to a conference in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the students is going with us, so there are opportunities for our friends in several networks. You can either be an acquaintance, a friend, or a best friend. And so there's several levels of circles of engagement, is what we call it. So wherever you're feeling and however you want to get your feet wet, you're welcome to do it. But our program is geared mainly to students. And let me put it this way: if you are a junior or senior, you might fit best as a friend of McNair, especially if you haven't had research opportunities. You may not. It's very competitive to get into the program, and so we're really looking for students at that point. If you're a junior or senior, if you join our program, you would have to already had research experience. But if
mm,
you're a freshman or even a first year or even a sophomore, you might not know research. You might not know what it is, and guess what? That's great. Then you will actually qualify more heavily than a student who's a senior in our program who doesn't know research or haven't had
and
research opportunities. Because again, we have time with you and to help you to know before you graduate, so that we can get you fully funded. And the last thing I'll say, I'm very excited that even this year, all of our graduating seniors are going off to graduate school or a post back program that's going to prepare them for graduate school. So again, it's a one, and our students who are still in the program, all of our returning scholars have all been accepted to research opportunities across the country, receiving
mm,
an average of $5,000 in living expenses and stuff for the summer, because of their work that they did to apply
mm.
and the support we did with our program to get them what they need.
Understood. This is fantastic. So those of you who are watching, we're gonna put the links in the description of the related links of the McNair programs and other programs.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So my next question is a two-part. Are you a first gen student, and what does first gen mean to you?
Yes, 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 yes. So I am a first gen student, and I am extremely excited, because I am working with students who sort of have come, from my sort of background. So my students are mostly first gen, not
Mm,
all, but mostly. But also, I would say 90, probably all of my students, if they're not first gen, probably majority or 90% of them, in essence, are first gen when it comes to graduate education. So maybe their parents have a
so
bachelor's
they're first
degree.
gen grad student. Yeah.
Right, exactly. First gen grad student, which I think is sometimes overlooked. It's often
Yes.
overlooked. I ain't even gonna say sometimes. I think it's often overlooked.
Mm,
And so I am thrilled to support those students because, again, you don't know what you don't know, and if you don't have support systems in place to sort of help you navigate, there's assumptions that you understand it all, or that it is there at your fingertips. And when you have other things that you're also competing with, so not only do we have first gen, but we have low income students, and sometimes in our program, first gen low income goes together,
yeah.
in essence, with our populations. And so, you might say, well, you can find these things out, but you don't have the time to find these things out when you are having to work on top of, you're working, 20, 40 hours a week, going to school as a student as well, and you have to work, to pay bills, and you're not sure about, what your summer's going to look like, because now you don't have funding for the year. It's just a whole lot of things that people have to navigate. But and they do it, and we do it, and they bring so much to the table, and so just having community to help think through things, and help to provide opportunities, showing students that they actually have what it takes,
Mm.
and they don't have to change who they are to be able to be successful. They can just be themselves, and that community, and that this community will embrace them. That's what I appreciate.
Understood. Understood. Okay. So my next question is that tell me about a time that being a first year student you faced a challenging time and how did you overcome it? So being a first year student, a particular incident that or particular phase of life that was very challenging and you overcame it. How did you overcome it?
Hmm. Challenging time. I think honestly, my moving to the Grinnell, when I was
Mm,
in Iowa, moving there, again away from family, further away. I was in Atlanta, so still a big city, Atlanta, but it was still some
mm,
distance. But trying to make adjustments to one's making that kind of adjustment, being away and being away from my culture, even trying to find, like, I had to start cutting my own hair, like, and I just cut it all bald, like, because again, the nearest haircut place was an hour away, and I was definitely not going to the haircut place in the city, in that town, because they didn't look
it's
like
expensive.
they didn't look like they could understand black hair, right? And so I didn't even step foot into their barbershop. But it's that kind of thing that was challenging. In my first year, it was challenging. I had two different bosses, and because I had a boss for religious life and a boss for res life, so it was 50-50, my breakdown. And the res life boss was very considerate and nice, and the religious life person was very challenging to work with or work for. We became it became a better relationship once I that second year I was no longer under the religious life. Then became more like colleagues, and I really loved that, and that was a great relationship at that point, where she wasn't my boss, so having her as a colleague was definitely better than having her as a boss.
Mm,
But that first year, it was hell. It was hell. But I
mm,
knew I had to persevere, and I had no choice but to, because I didn't know. I was still trying to figure out what I want to do. I didn't want to be in church ministry. So after doing that
mm,
Master of Divinity, it sort of prepares you for church. And I really didn't want to do church, because my whole theology had changed, and my thought process, and church people just got on my nerves. And so I was just like, that's not what I wanted to do. And so I started finding my home in student affairs, student life, academic affairs, all that kind of stuff. And so that year was challenging, but I built community. I had several friends who ended up not well, they became friends. Two black sisters who ended up coming to Iowa, and being on staff at that college with me. We're actually still friends. Actually, one of them I'm talking to later today,
mm,
about some things. But we got connected, and we were, the 2 years we were there together, really helped me get through those challenging times.
that's it.
And so again, it was being connected to community, finding spaces that will help me thrive. There was also a brother there, who lived in Iowa, lived in Des Moines. He was the financial aid director, Arnold Woods, and he became like a father figure to me. And so all major holidays, Super Bowl, I'll be at his house. I would go to church with him in Des Moines at times. His family really adopted me in essence while I was there in Des Moines, and I think that's what helped me to get through that difficult time too. So really, community, finding community.
Understood. Like networking, perseverance, and community building. Got it.
Yes, most
Okay.
definitely.
So you were a first gen undergrad student, right?
Correct.
All right. So in your undergrad days, so if you think now, if you were to go back, what would you have done differently as a first
Ooh.
gen student?
Yeah, that's a good question. I often say that I was so committed to my Christian community on campus
Mm.
that I also think that that limited the amount of learning
Networking
from others.
opportunities.
Learning from others. And I was still in, I was a part of the cultural center. I was helped to do a lot at UMBC. I
Mm.
when we had the interfaith center, I was a part of that development of that as well. Um and so it was a beautiful time for me, but I also don't think I was learned as much as I could. I was stuck in the
Mm.
same friend groups or the same orgs, etc., that I there was a lot that I missed out on.
Mm.
And so that's one thing that I would say. The other thing is that I would have explored um the world more, so being able to do the study abroad or going to other
Mm.
that I only went to that one research opportunity, and I hated it so much, and no one told me, hey, even though you hate this one, you can do another one that you might not hate, right? So try it again another time. And I wish I would have done that, right? And done that early and known, okay, you can, you don't have to be stuck in a box. And my
Got it.
scholar program was Marhoff. It was I felt boxed in, that there was only one way to do it, and you had to do it this particular way. And now I'm excited to actually be a part of a scholars program where I really have the benefit of my experience to be able to have students think more broadly, think of
Mm.
opportunities, and not be boxed in because of what the past has shown, but really
Understood.
think about what is possible.
Understood. So your suggestion is to for the student is to explore other opportunities as well, and then figure out what is their best fit.
Right.
Got it.
And having multiple voices from mentors. So like
Mm.
sometimes we get stuck in my mentoring that I do. We really holistic critical mentoring. We focus on building a network of mentors so that the student has multiple viewpoints, and then the student, who is again their number one mentors themselves, they can then make a decision based on all that they've heard.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Secondly, next is that, do you think that this term first generation student is a negative term right now? Is considered as negative term right now among the common peers, normal peers?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
I think that we have older generations who add their negative tone to it.
Mm.
I don't think first gen students do. At least not the ones that I've talked to. What they end up, what's been helpful to them is knowing that they're not alone, right?
Mm.
And so, what I often find is that they are seeking community. They're seeking about maybe 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, we had our a gathering of incoming applicants for the program,
Mm.
and it was our group interview day. And the one comment I remember seeing, this was one of our largest number of Latinx Hispanic students who applied and were going through our process. And I
Mm.
remember them saying during that day was that they didn't realize that at UMBC there were a lot of first gen students, whether Hispanic or Black or what have you. They didn't, like, they thought they were, they felt like it was just them. And so
Mm.
when they realized that they weren't alone in the process, and this was also the beginning of the development of the first gen network and all that we were doing around that, that really excited them. And so, if you, it would be it's a stigma around it if you're the only one, right?
Mm.
Because you stick out like a sore thumb, or at least you think you do, right? But
Mm.
when you are in community, and when you
You
and
feel
when
more
you know that
comfortable.
exactly, And I think that's what people are recognizing, that they're not alone. There's more people, and there's also that they're learning from each other and gaining insight from each other. And eventually, all of our students are going to graduate and have kids, and then we will no longer have first gens, right? And
Yep.
that's you know, it's
Yep.
going to happen
That's good.
over
Yeah.
over time. But that's what we we look forward to. But I hope by that time that we've also changed the dynamics on the campuses, so that the things that the first gens had to experience while here, that those things, including the attachment of stigma around this, would also be gone.
Understood. Understood. Okay. Nicely spoken. So my next question is that what something you wish you had when you were starting off school? Like as a first student, what are the resources or any kind of mentorship you wish you had when you were studying off school?
I always go back to this. The one thing that messed me up was the finances.
Mm,
And really thinking about finances and really having someone to talk me through about what loans to get and what loans not to get, and actually don't get no loans.
mm,
Even in grad school, I often tell a story that, like I was eating steak when I could should have been eating oodles and noodles, ramen,
mm,
like I wasn't mindful of the finances, but then also I fell in love, and then I ended up spending money and giving money to the person I fell in love with and never got that money back. And so all these right, and it's just crazy, right? And so those are loans and stuff that I still have. And so part of it I think is that financial budgeting management, I think,
mm.
should all be a course for all students. Our McNair scholars, all every year they have to do something around financial
Literacy.
development, and we do the financial smarts program at UMBC. They do it, everybody, even if they've already done it, great, but they got to go through the course that the university has set up. That's a Blackboard course, and then every
Mm,
spring semester they have to participate in at least one of the events for the financial smarts week.
mm,
And you think about that, if you are a freshman coming to our program, not only did you do the course, but by the time you graduated, you would have at least done 4 other sessions, in
mm,
essence, around financial management, whatever that could be, household ownership, that could be taxes, whatever they have, they got to go
mm.
to at least one. And some oftentimes they go to multiple because it's of interest to them. And so making that aware, making that available, making it required is something that I wish that I had as a student.
Understood. So, resource for financial literacy where you could learn about like making your financial decision in your life. Understood. Got it. Okay, so my next question would be, what is something you'd like to see change moving forward in regards to first gen in college? So, what is something that you see that that's not going exactly how it should be going? It should change, and what suggestions do you have for an organization like us? What should we do to make it a better place for a first gen student?
Um, I would like to see, like, first gen advocates.
Mm,
And I know we're working on that now, but where every first gen student who comes to our institution is connected with a first gen advocate
okay.
that supports them through their journey. And it could be multiple, where they have multiple advocates throughout their journey. But again, you don't know what you don't know. You need people who really understand the fullness of the work that you're interested in. Our advising system at UMBC is not as strong it needs to be. Faculty are advising and not really asking the questions, and they are making assumptions about students. And I'm often having to re-advise students and have conversations with students about their
Mm,
lived experience, their life experience, even in our advising, like even after or while they have been advised. And some advisors
mm,
just tag students to, and this has been going on since I was a student. It happened to me, as my advisor
mm,
was like that, until I switched advisors myself, and I found my own advisor. and she was a professor who just worked with me as I was a student, because she understood me. She understood my lived experience, where I was going, my interests and all, and not just making sure I do classes or finish, the coursework. There was an ethics of care, which is also
Mm,
missing from our advising system. And so I think that that would be important.
mm,
I'm a proponent of holistic critical mentoring, which is a part of that. I think could be a part of that advising, where the students' voices are centered. So you're not just telling them what they need; you're actually listening to them to find
mm,
out what they need, and helping them to develop a course setup that will really meet the requirements of the institution, but more importantly, meet the need of the student. And I think that that's what our first gen, actually, that's universal. I think everybody, not
mm,
just first gen, but if we really want to help first gen, we would do that, realizing that in essence that will also help the other students as well.
mm. Got it. Got it. So we're almost at the end of our podcast. So I have one last question,
Okay.
which is a fun one, I think. So give us one book suggestion, one movie suggestion, and as you say that you are a cook, one food recommendation. What food recommendation? It can be in Baltimore or it can be any
Got
specific
you,
food that
got you,
like
got you,
you
got
think
you.
you wish. Yeah.
So book. One of my favorite books that I often go to as I do this work is, and I think I'm not sure the full title, but it's an old book, Dr. King, Martin Luther King, one of my favorites.
Mm.
And he really talks about why we can't wait. And I think I
Well,
think that's the title of Why We Can't Wait. And it's really like this sense of the urgency for racial justice,
mm,
and the end of segregation and all. And that continues even as we talk about first gen stuff, like the things that are
mm,
happening. We don't have time to wait. Lives are at stake. And so I would definitely say anything, even in that kind of area, the civil rights area, we can learn a lot from the civil rights movement when it comes to advocacy and support. So that's the one. What else did you say?
movie. One
Movie.
movie.
I don't know if I
Do
have
you
a
watch a lot
movie.
of movies?
Huh?
Do you watch a lot of
I
movies?
do. I mean, I'm a Netflix kind of guy, and
Okay.
I love just personally. I like to watch shows or
Okay.
TV
You want
shows.
TV shows? That
Like
would be
my
great
favorite, I
suggestion.
just finished rewatching the whole thing, was Madam Secretary.
Okay.
And if you watch that, even now with everything that's happened in Russia and the presidency, of the 45 presidency, all that, it's very
Mm,
interesting to watch that. In the pandemic too, that like this was all pre-pandemic movie, I mean television show, but it's
mm,
very interesting. So I might even watch that again. Like I enjoyed it. And like those kind of shows, like the West Wing, I like that kind of stuff,
mm.
the presidency type things. I don't know if you said this, but music, I'm a lover of India Arie's music. And
Okay.
India Irie is an artist, and their Strength, Courage, and Wisdom is one that is on
Mm,
repeat for me with her. But there's a lot of like self love, black love, black support, in her music and stuff, and divine inspiration is in her music. And so I'm her music is on point. And then the last thing you said was.
food because you love
Oh,
cooking.
well, yeah. When you said Baltimore, and I try to, my students who travel with me, particularly either over the summer or when we do things together, now that we have we're able to do more things, is
Mm.
crabs. The
Crab cake.
No, not the crab. Well, the crab cake is all right, but I'm talking about the Maryland blue crab.
Okay.
So
Okay.
learning how to open them and do the work to get the good old meat and the crab. So
And if somebody wants to eat it in a restaurant and don't do the hard work, what restaurant would you suggest?
say it again.
So if somebody doesn't do the hard work and like make it themselves and they want to
Oh yeah,
go and
yeah,
eat
yeah.
at a
Well, you would
restaurant.
want for the hardcore. Um. Uh. even by UMBC, there's this place I think called CJ's.
Okay.
That's there. But look, they can inbox me. There's a place by me in Sykesville. It's just different places. But also like the crab cake, if folks is really interested in that, the crab cake, Jimmy Seafood or even
Mm,
G&M's,
mm.
there's some places that you gotta find it. But I tell folks to get a real Maryland crab cake, you gotta come to Maryland. When you go to other places and they say it's Maryland style, don't believe it. It ain't the same.
Got it.
So
Understood.
yeah, you got to come to Maryland to get that Maryland crab cake.
Got it. Understood. Thank you so much. This is the end of our podcast. It was really nice chatting with you. It was really insightful. Thank you really for doing this.
No problem, my pleasure. And I look forward to reviewing it. And folks, you can give them my email address as well if there's other questions and concerns there.
Mm,
And I really
cool.
appreciate you all doing this because even as my thing said, this is a way of disrupting the system and dismantling white
Yes, sir.
supremacy and getting the stories
Yep.
out. And so I thank
Very
you
good.
for this opportunity.
That's the goal. Thank you so much. Have a good one.